Vikings get a little healthier heading into Sunday night against the Colts, but not all the way healthier. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Hashtag everydayers. I appreciate you all so much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, it's Friday. That means we've got the over-under. We've got your bold predictions coming up. But also, what we haven't been able to do is talk at all about the injury report. Pretty good news on a lot of fronts. Everybody is a full participant except for Taki Taimani and Blake Cashman, who's been dealing with turf toe. A lot of people are wondering, what's the deal with Blake Cashman? Why can't he come back? This is sort of the nature of a turf toe injury. It's one of those things that's like week to week for a lot of weeks. Like it just nags and lingers and you feel maybe I'm going to be okay. And then you get out on the practice field and you're like, no. And that's going to be the way it is for as long as it is. There's not really a way to determine it, how long-term of an injury it is. But on the flip side of that, TJ Hockenson, he's still on the injury report, but he's been a full participant all week long. He's expected to play. He's active. He's on the roster. That's all good. Dalton Risner, not active, not on the roster, but also a full participant all week, just with the asterisk of he's still in his 21-day practice window coming off of short-term IR. It's a back injury, by the way, for Dalton Risner. That's what's been nagging him all year long. Look, a back injury that keeps you at half the season, that's pretty serious stuff. So whether he is available or not, like you got to be real slow with that one. Whether or not Risner replaces Ed Ingram, if that does happen, I'll be curious to really look into how he plays versus how Ingram plays and like how stark the difference is, because based on what those two guys have done before, I wouldn't say that Ingram is a worse guard than Risner. Risner has plenty of problems of his own, and I think we get a little bit too excited about the guy who we don't remember them screwing up in a while. You know, they haven't made any mistakes because they haven't been on the roster. And then we go, wow, this guy doesn't make any mistakes. Like it's just this like cognitive thing in our brains that kind of makes us really excited for the backup. It's the same gene that makes you always call for the backup quarterback if the starting quarterback's playing worse, even if the backup quarterback is like someone you know is not very good, right? It's calling for Kelly Holcomb over Brooks Bollinger or the other way around. That's the one. That was like the formative moment for me, was as a kid listening to people cheer when Brooks Bollinger took the field in a game in 2006, going like, oh, they just always want the backup. Anyways, that's all neither here nor there. We got to still wait for Risner to be healthy before we even find out what happens at guard. Cam Robinson taking reps with the ones, by the way. So there's no, it doesn't seem like there's like, let's give him a week, right? Because I think if they didn't intend to play Cam Robinson this week, they probably would have practiced the line as they were going to play it this week. You would have seen, David Quessenberry out there or Blake Brandel kicking out to tackle or whatever they would have done. So I would have to guess that that's their plan. And then, if you get there on Sunday and he's like, dude, I do not know these plays yet. You can't do this. I got to just be honest. I'm not like, if you get to Sunday and there's a problem, then you like improvise, but it would be it would be a similar situation to Quessenberry getting hurt or to Robinson getting like hurt in warmups. And you'd have to be, okay, we'll go with our backup plan then. But it seems like they're practicing for Cam Robinson to play. So with all those updates, the one that I think has gotten the most attention, and that's because it's the one that's still negative, is that Blake Cashman isn't going to play, probably, right? He's been turf toe, out all week, DNP all week. And what that means is the Vikings have two options to replace him, and they've mixed and matched with both of these in the last few games. One is Kamu Grugier-Hill. They just have, the backup go in. He's played fine, got a couple interceptions, has made some mistakes. He's been a backup. And Also, going out of dime personnel, where you would have, Bynum and Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus, and then your three corners, Byron Murphy, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin. 6 DBs. There's your dime. And having Josh Metellus essentially be a linebacker, just play as a linebacker. Both of these have their issues. Of course they do, right? They're backup plans. But they have really favored the Metellus thing, and it has gone not as great. I don't like it for him. I don't think that it's the best place for him to thrive, maybe would be a way to put it, because it pins him down into one specific role. And the thing about Josh Metellus, the whole point of him is versatility, right? That you can put him anywhere on the field. And not only is that just a lot of utility, it makes it really hard for a quarterback, because where 44 is doesn't tell you anything. Well, now 44 is in the same place every time, so you can't use that weapon of disguise, and it makes things easier to uncover pre-snap and kind of solve that puzzle, which is a lot of what I think when quarterbacks come to scout the Vikings, when they get ready for a Vikings game, I think a lot of the prep work is in trying to uncover what they are doing, or in trying to find a tell that shows you what the coverage is pre-snap. If you could do that, if you could crack that code, yeah, the Vikings' whole thing would fall apart. Removing that one layer of entropy makes the code easier to crack. But it's also that Metellus is not comfortable as a will linebacker. He is not a will linebacker. I think he can fill into that spot when it's part of some clever disguise. But as an every down, line up weak side, be in the B gap, stack and fit, that's not his role. That's not. He's not comfortable with that. And you can tell that he's not comfortable with that. He's, I think, getting more comfortable with that game to game, because I think he's a quick study. That's part of why he's been so valuable. But this dude's a safety or a nickel. His best plays come in moments where he can diagnose and be aggressive. And as a linebacker, sometimes you can do that. You can be Ivan Pace, right? Ivan Pace will just say, I think I see that the run is on this gap, or you can shoot the gap a puller just vacated or something, and you can go make a crazy play. And make one of those every couple of games. And Metellus plays it a little bit more like a linebacker is supposed to, right? Ivan Pace is sort of freelancing on that. And sometimes it gets them got, right? Sometimes he'll shoot the gap, be wrong, and then you get a huge run. That happened a bunch of times against the Lions. But Metellus plays it in that sort of safe linebacker way that you're supposed to. He's playing it. He's playing it like a veteran, like a backup that is probably being told, hey, just go do the role. Just go do your best in the role. Go do everything the way that you're supposed to, and we'll hope that this play comes down to somebody else, because we're just trying to fill this spot, right? And on top of that, I think he has safety instincts to play coverage first sometimes. And that will get him out of position. That got him out of position on a touchdown from, I believe it was Jahmyr Gibbs in the Lions game, not the big long one, but the one that happened on the 8. He just kind of got carried out of position in a world where I don't think he was supposed to be playing coverage first, but he was playing coverage first. And of course he was playing coverage first. He's a D-back. He's out of position. He's not comfortable. And with the actual zone drops that you get, I don't think that he is comfortable with some of those assignments, doing them over and over and over again. Again, his thing is versatility. His thing is knowing how to do every single job well enough so that your value comes in that you do every single job. But when you're doing the same job over and over and over again, I feel like the amount of precision needs to be a little bit more. You have to be a lot more consistent about that one singular job. And that's just not how he's been trained here. That's just not how the Vikings want to be using him, but that's how they have been using him with Cashman out. So for me, as many blemishes as Kama Grugier-Hill has had, I sort of prefer that. But I think what they're going with is, if we're threatened by speed, we want faster guys out there, so we'll use Metellus. And if they're not, they'll use more Kama Grugier-Hill. That's what maybe I feel like they're doing. And against the Lions and the Rams, there's a lot of speed. Against the Colts, not as fast of a wide receiver course. So we'll see if they go with the same thing. There's a lot about the Colts that is hard to suss out, especially according to the betting markets. So let's take a look at that next up in the Over Under. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, or whatever. So if it's a Saturday night, you don't know what you want to do, you're looking for some fun stuff in your area, let Game Time take you on a journey and they'll find you a deal. The more options you give them, the better a deal they're going to find you. Or if you just want to get to that thing you've been dying to go to, you can toggle on their all-in pricing and make sure that you're finding a deal that you're happy with at checkout. No hidden fees, no nothing. You flick that switch on and you will see what those tickets will cost you, bar none. That kind of honesty is what makes Game Time my favorite place to find tickets. I am just exclusively a Game Time user now. Anytime I'm trying to find tickets to something, including Vikings games, I've used Game Time and it's been a great experience. But if you don't find the best deal, let's say you find the same section and row somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's the lowest price Game Time guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and then, of course, the agonizing suffering that happens after any given Vikings game. That is why we have created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like yourselves. The fans who are first in the parking lot, last to leave the stadium, we see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long, and that's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. I can answer your burning questions like what is going on with Dallas Turner? Why did Anthony Richardson get benched? Is Cam Robinson good? All that stuff is on my Patreon page right now, and you can go check it out for less than $4 a month. Now it is time to check out the betting markets. It's time for the over-under. Today on the over-under, we got to look at this Vikings-Colts matchup. And it's interesting. Colts props are not as easy to find. We are, of course, using FanDuel.com for all of these props, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. And on FanDuel, things have balanced out a little bit. This line opened as Vikings -6.5. It fell to -5.5. It, I think, almost went to -4.5, but is now evened out -110 on both sides. That means that the market has basically balanced. People are equally hitting the Vikings and the Colts at -5.5. So that's going to be where the line probably stays unless you get some other crazy injury news. But the over-under is also 46.5. So that implies the Vikings winning 27-21. That's like the market's expectation. I say the market's expectation. This is what we always do on the over-under. We're not necessarily just looking at betting lines that like I like. Or I'm telling you should bet this or you should bet that, not necessarily, but rather we're using the betting market to try to get a sense for where the public is at and using the lines to do so. So the public thinks the Vikings are better than the Colts. That probably doesn't surprise you, but we can get a lot more specific than that and find things that are interesting about where the market is at that maybe you will find it. Maybe you disagree with stuff and you go, whoa, the Vikings should win by way more than that. And you can go ahead and bet that if you want, if you live in a state that supports such activities. But what I find interesting in the touchdown scorers part is doesn't seem to be as much of an expectation for the Colts scoring for a team whose team like total points over under is 20.5, which is a fairly average, maybe a little on the low side line. By the way, their over is much longer, much cheaper than the under. The under is -118. The over is -104. So that means more people are hitting the over 20.5 than the under 20.5. It's a fairly normal place, but in terms of who scores the touchdowns or who is going to be the guy for the Colts in this game, if the Colts do well, it's really hard for the betting market to figure that out. They basically have no idea. There are only two minus odds touchdown scorers in this game, and they are Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones is minus 150. Justin Jefferson is minus 125, was minus 115 last night when I prepped a lot of this. But so it's actually more people have hit the Justin Jefferson line now. So if you're the betting market, you're going, well, Aaron Jones is going to score a touchdown. Justin Jefferson's going to score a touchdown. There's your like chalk outcome, but nobody on the Colts is the chalk outcome. Jonathan Taylor is plus 110. Josh Downs plus 175. Michael Pittman plus 175. So I guess you would say Jonathan Taylor, but that still implies less than 50-50 odds that Jonathan Taylor scores a touchdown. Personally, I would take that, but that's just me. This trend continues. You have Joe Flacco over 1.5 passing touchdowns is plus 120. So again, that's less than 50-50 odds that Joe Flacco passes for more than just one touchdown. For comparison's sake, Sam Darnold, who has been minus odds for that basically every week, is at minus 140 for the same prop right now. All in all, it's hard to find a bet on the Colts at all. At least it was when I did this last night, but it still is. As I'm just looking at it right now, there's no receiving props for any Colts. It's all Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Jefferson's over is 84.5 this time. That's kind of what it's been sitting at. It didn't actually move after he finally went over 100 in the Rams game. So if you want to hit that, that's where that is at. And then Jordan Addison is 39.5. That's basically where those two guys have been hovering. Justin Jefferson's over 6.5 receptions, and Jordan Addison over 3.5 receptions as well. That's where those are. But both of those are plus as well, which is interesting for those lines to land in such a spot. Usually you will see the sports books, like FanDuel, will make it 7.5 then, so that they're not giving everybody good odds. But that's, I guess, where things have landed there. But like the only Colts skill player with a prop that isn't a touchdown prop is Jonathan Taylor over 74.5 rushing yards. Everything else is a touchdown prop. So if you're going to try to bet on the Colts, you don't get to do Josh Downs receiving, at least not on FanDuel, not as I'm looking at it right now. You don't get to do, Mo Alley Cox receiving or anything like that. You can bet on Joe Flacco's passing or Jonathan Taylor's rushing and some touchdown props. So that tells me that when the betting public when the sports book looks at this, they go, who's going to be the guy for the Colts? And they don't know. That doesn't mean that they don't think anybody will be the guy. It's that they can't untangle the Colts and figure out who their guy is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be Michael Pittman, who's been, I guess, playing hurt, but playing bad? Is it Alec Pierce, who's been more of a deep threat, but as a 4.41 guy, which is perfectly adequate speed? That doesn't make you like a burner, though. Or is it Josh Downs, who's a bit more of an athlete? He's more of a yak guy, but, he's smaller, and he's had, I would say, up and down production. Like, you look at it, you go, I don't know what this is going to be. And probably a lot of this is because Joe Flacco is in and not Anthony Richardson, so it becomes a little harder to bet on that. You're going on 3 other games. Some of those were weird. So it's a lot harder to suss out the Colts. Whereas the Vikings, their formula from a betting perspective, from a fantasy perspective, from a like stat accumulation perspective is pretty clear. Justin Jefferson's going to get a lot of yards. Jordan Addison's going to get somewhere between 30 and 50 yards, something like that. He's probably going to get, 3 or 4 catches. One of them's going to be explosive. That's kind of the Jordan Addison formula right now, is that it's like oops, all shot plays, or that he's, second in the progression after Justin Jefferson. But the thing that none of this is accounting for is TJ Hockenson coming back. TJ Hockenson absolutely changes the volume equation. When TJ Hockenson, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison were all healthy at points last year, which they didn't really converge a lot because Jefferson missed half the season. But during games where all 3 of those guys were healthy, TJ Hockenson became wide receiver 2. He was the guy that got the second most targets, the second most yards. And you kind of the best Jordan Addison moments came when Justin Jefferson wasn't taking all the targets, which makes a lot of sense. He's Justin Jefferson. Of course he is. And you probably don't want the Vikings to change that just to get a better wide receiver 2 stat line, right? But there's no betting on TJ Hockenson anywhere here. The sportsbook, or the FanDuel at least, doesn't give you a way to bet on that, which again tells me that there's uncertainty, right? They don't know what's going to happen, and they aren't going to risk being really wrong about that and letting the public take them over for one. These things are a profit deal, okay? So that, I think, tells you a lot about where the public is at on this game, where they have one team that makes sense to them and they favored that team, and one team that doesn't make a lot of sense to them at all, and they don't know what to make of. And I think that's a good way to approach this. The other thing that we got to do here is have my rabbits pick the game. As you know, how I find the rabbits is integral to the challenge of getting them to participate in this. And the ever choosy Zoe was separate from ZD. So I got them to pick separately, which is actually kind of nice. They didn't interfere with each other. Zoe picked the Vikings. She's picked the Vikings every single week this year. And hey, she's 4-2 on those. Next up, I had to go to where ZD was and let him go pick. He was a little more awake and less difficult to coax into eating, which he always is. And he ended up going for the Colts. So even though they were separate, they still picked differently and they still picked along the same lines they have always been picking. Love to just have a few coin flips in a row happen that way. Next up, your bold predictions. Of course, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle all the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 on anything I just mentioned in that whole last segment, and you can get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. But any $5 bet works. That means you can take some ridiculous alt line like Sam Darnold, 175 or more passing yards. That's not a lot of passing yards, and Sam Darnold has crushed that mark in every single game this year. Kevin O'Connell volume. You can get that at -1,000, but if you put $5 on it and assuming that wins, you get 30-1 on that, $150 in bonus bets for a $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app also gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. So if, let's say, the Vikings get out to a 33-0 lead and you're starting to feel the cosmos shrink around you, you can take a Colts money line just to emotionally hedge. Whatever hunch you get in the middle of the game, you can check out latest stats, live play-by-play, and all the tools you need to make a good decision. Get started once again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Bold! It's time for the bold prediction segment where we take your craziest ideas and see if any of them hit. This is my favorite part of the week. You guys always get so unhinged. Last week was very fun. Not as possible, but very fun. A lot of weird stuff was going on leading into that game, and I think everyone was a bit delirious off of the pain of that last-minute Detroit loss, going into weird trade rumors and stuff. So here's what we had last week for bold predictions, and then I'll get into the bold predictions you all sent me this week. A Duck said that, confused with the recent rumors, both Darnold and Stafford would score points for the other team, such as a pick 6, pick 2, or safety or whatever. Sam Darnold does get credited with a safety here, so you did get one of 2, but no pick 6. Just the one interception for Stafford, and it was right on the sideline. Luis Arias supporter said that one of the Rams players would get traded to the Vikings less than 24 hours before game time and suit up and play anyways without knowing any plays. We'd have like a Josh Dobbs immediate revenge game situation. It's kind of funny. We do have an immediate revenge game situation with Cam Robinson. It's just not that immediate. But he will play next week. He's going to play against his old team. It was wild. Like that's going to be where that lands. So we'll probably have a lot of helpful things to tell us about the Jaguars offense. Josh Wells says that reflecting on the short week, this ends up being the shortest game of all time, beating the record of 2 hours and 29 minutes set in 1996. We did not get that. I did set a reminder, so I was in the stands for that game, and I did get like my phone buzzed, and I was like, and it was like, it just said, "Did the game end yet?" And it was like still in the third quarter. So, nope, not quite. Matt Chinander said that the Vikings would have travel troubles and the game would be postponed to Friday. I crossed that one out after they successfully got to LA on Thursday, but somebody did say, like, what about traffic? And I was like, LA traffic is real. I think they're staying like right next to the stadium, so probably wouldn't have been anything, but that would have been an immature cross out if LA traffic prevented the Vikings from getting to the game. They also probably would forfeit in a case because it's like just like super your own fault. And smart guy Ryan said, in honor of Caesar's betrayal, the Vikings would get gashed by dagger for over 23 points coming from that specific play. I only counted one dagger rep. The Rams did something a little bit different. They used bootleg stuff, but not just like classic nakeds. Like they used clever bootleg ideas to attack the flats a little bit more than they did over the middle. So we didn't get there, but onward, upward, hopefully. Week 9. Indianapolis Colts. So many of you tried to have funny jokes with the 33, and only a few of you succeeded. One of whom was JV Swaps, who just said bigger comeback. It's a bigger comeback. So that does not specify the team. So if the Vikings get up 35-0 and then blow the game, then that does count if it's like the other way around. But yeah, a bigger comeback. And then conversely, Dropped Your Podcast said smallest comeback in NFL history. Now, I'm not quite sure how to do this because you can only tie it, right? So what I need is for I need a very specific situation here. This is going to be one of these bold predictions that is bold because it's very specific. But I need it to be a 1-point comeback. You need to enter the fourth quarter down a point and then win the game. 1 point exactly, and then win the game. That's where I'm at. And it's just a very specific one to happen. But that would be the smallest, tied for the smallest comeback in NFL history. Shadow said that the Vikings would right some of the wrongs by successfully getting 2 defensive touchdowns against the Colts, the ones that were stolen from Chandon Sullivan, by the same referee crew, by the way, that screwed up the face mask call last week. Not that I'm bitter. I'm not bitter, of course. Could never be bitter. But boy, those guys shouldn't be in the league anymore. The Colts, I think, are a lot less turnover prone with Joe Flacco at the helm, so we'll see how that goes. But the next one comes from Scoliosis, who says, both teams will have moments where the sky is falling and moments where they look unstoppable. Every quarter will be won by 14 or more points, but the final score will be within 6. I did say in the crossover, it did feel to me like this game is going to be swingy. I think a lot of people are looking past this game, and maybe that's the ultimate lesson here is I don't think the Colts should be underestimated. I think it's okay that the Vikings are favored by, more than just like home field advantage. But I don't think the Colts should be underestimated. Joe Flacco knows how to beat a blitz. Joe Flacco knows how to throw to the middle of the field if that's what's open. He's a wily veteran. Sure, the talent is not crazy, but the Vikings, both the good and the bad of their defense is that they pose a different question than just how talented are you. It's really how good are you at stuff that's not as common. You can find a lot of talented QBs in the league, but I don't know if you can find a lot of QBs that are comfortable against the blitz, and the Vikings are just hitting 3 of them in a row. That said, Joe Flacco still does get worse when blitz versus not blitzed, so it's still probably wise to blitz him, but he's been around the block. He's seen every coverage disguise, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to kind of get him off of his rocker than maybe it will, say, against Trevor Lawrence next week. So I just don't underestimate the Colts. Don't look at this game like it should be a sleepwalk into a win. Hooray, we're 6-2. This one could absolutely drop if the Vikings go a little wrong. And I think it being swingy, where there will be, a team that screams out to a 10-point lead and a team that, doesn't, that, and then a team comes back, and then by halftime it's a 1-score game, and you're going, oh my God, they started so well, but then what happened? This is a swingy team, and I think they're going to have a swingy game here against another swingy team. Where just these teams get hot and then cold, and then it's just a matter of who had a little bit more hot than cold. Anyways, Ethan says that every Colts receiver will have exactly 33 yards, and Joe Flacco will throw for 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I will say I only need 1 wide receiver to have exactly 33 yards to hit this, and then 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Obviously, this is a 33 thing, but the last one comes from Eric the Red, who says, in the spirit of Halloween, both teams will combine for exactly 6 touchdowns, 6 punts, and 6 turnovers, thereby replicating the mark of the Prince of Darkness and dooming both fan bases to an eternity of torment and damnation. And to Eric, I have to say, my dude, we're already here. I will see you guys all on Sunday for the postcast. Thank you guys so much for hanging out all week. And as always, Skull.